CISA Explained. By Baheeg Ahmed. Genre: Computers and Technology. Target audience: IT auditors, security consultants, compliance officers, and CISA exam candidates. Style: technical, practical, tutorial, reference, instructional. The auditor's mindset: bridging technology and business. Section 1.1, Defining the Modern IS Auditor, Roles, Responsibilities, and Ethics. Section 1.2, The Intersection of Risk, Compliance, and Internal Controls. Section 1.3, Analyzing the ISACA Code of Professional Ethics and Standards. Section 1.4, Navigating the Audit Charter and Organizational Independence. The journey to becoming a Certified Information Systems Auditor, CISA, is more than memorizing domains or understanding network protocols. It begins with a fundamental shift in perspective. You are no longer just a technologist fixing broken code, nor are you purely a business manager focusing solely on profit margins. You are the bridge between these two worlds. This chapter establishes the mental framework required to succeed not just on the exam, but in the field. We will dismantle the traditional view of the auditor as a policeman and rebuild it into the role of a strategic assurance partner. The goal is to develop professional skepticism, an attitude that neither blindly trusts nor blindly accuses, but critically assesses evidence to find the truth. Figure: extra detailed AI-ready prompt for AI-generated diagram showing a split-screen conceptual illustration. On the left, a chaotic server room with green matrix code and glowing cables represents technology. On the right, a sleek corporate boardroom with bar charts and briefcases represents business. In the center, a translucent, glowing bridge formed by shield icons and magnifying glasses connects the two sides. An abstract silhouette of a professional stands on the bridge, holding a tablet that emits a soft blue light, translating the binary code from the left into business metrics on the right. Style: isometric 3D vector art, clean lines, corporate blue and gold color palette, high contrast, white background. Section 1.1, Defining the Modern IS Auditor, Roles, Responsibilities, and Ethics. The modern IS auditor is a translator. Your primary responsibility is to interpret complex technical risks into language that the board of directors can understand and act upon. If you cannot explain why an unpatched server impacts the bottom line, the technical finding is irrelevant to the business strategy. We often mistake auditing for simply checking boxes on a compliance list. While compliance is part of the job, your true role is providing assurance. Assurance is the confidence that an organization's systems will protect its assets, maintain data integrity, and achieve organizational goals effectively. Consider that expectation gap. This is the difference between what IT operations believes an auditor does, find faults to get them in trouble, and what an auditor actually does, identify risks to save the company from loss. Closing this gap requires empathy and clear communication. When you walk into an audit engagement, you wear three hats, though never all at once. The detective, gathering evidence, interviewing staff, and analyzing logs to determine what actually happened versus what management says happened. The teacher, explaining to IT staff why a specific control exists. When people understand the why, they are less likely to bypass the how. The partner, working with management to agree on remediation plans that are practical and cost-effective. A distinct characteristic of a CISA-certified professional is the adherence to a higher standard of conduct. You are often granted privileged access to sensitive data, payroll, trade secrets, and health records. The badge of the auditor carries an implicit promise that this access will not be abused. Section 1.2, The Intersection of Risk, Compliance, and Internal Controls. To think like an auditor, you must understand the relationship between risk, compliance, and controls. They are not interchangeable terms. They form a hierarchy of need that dictates how an organization operates. Risk is the potential for loss or damage. It is the driver of all security activities. If there is no risk, there is no need for a control. Compliance is the minimum standard set by law or industry regulations, like GDPR or SOX. Internal controls are the mechanisms, policies, procedures, and technical configurations implemented to treat the risk and ensure compliance. Think of an organization as a high-performance sports car. Asterisk risk, crashing the car at high speeds. Asterisk compliance, the speed limit signs and traffic laws. Asterisk controls, the brakes, seatbelts, and airbags. Many people believe brakes exist to slow the car down. In reality, brakes exist to allow you to drive fast safely. Without brakes, you would have to drive 10 miles per hour to ensure you didn't crash. Good internal controls allow a business to innovate and move quickly without spiraling into chaos. Below is a breakdown of how these concepts interact in a real-world scenario. Component definition example, cloud storage. Author note, in my early years, I obsessed over eliminating all risk. I learned the hard way that this is impossible. Your job is not to eliminate risk, but to help management reduce it to an acceptable level. Figure, extra detailed AI-ready prompt for AI-generated diagram showing a risk-funneled visualization. At the top, a wide opening labeled Inherent Risk has red jagged shapes falling into it. Inside the funnel, several filter layers labeled Preventive Controls, Detective Controls, and Corrective Controls catch the red shapes. At the bottom narrow spout, only a few small, pale orange shapes emerge, labeled Residual Risk. The background should be a clean, technical grid. Use soft gradients of blue and gray for the funnel, with bright red for the risks to signify danger. Style, flat infographic design, minimalist, professional font. Section 1.3, Analyzing the ISACA Code of Professional Ethics and Standards. The ISACA Code of Professional Ethics is not merely a suggestion, it is a mandatory requirement for maintaining your CISA certification. On the exam, questions regarding ethics are binary. There is no gray area when it comes to the integrity of the profession. There are 7 key aspects of the code, but they boil down to 3 pillars. 1. Professional competence. You must only undertake audits for which you are qualified. If you are asked to audit a mainframe environment and you have never seen a mainframe, you have an ethical obligation to decline the engagement or obtain the necessary training and supervision before starting. 2. Truth and integrity. You must report the truth as you find it. You cannot withhold a material finding because the CIO is your friend, or because fixing it would be expensive for the company. Material facts, those that would change a stakeholder's decision, must be disclosed. 3. Privacy and confidentiality. You must not disclose information acquired in the course of your duties unless required by law. This extends to water cooler talk. Mentioning a vulnerability you found in a client system to a colleague over lunch is a violation of the code. We can visualize the ethical decision-making process using a logic flow. If you find yourself in a dilemma, apply this pseudocode logic to your decision. Function check _ethics, situation. IF action violates _ or OR violates _ISACA _code then. Return prohibited. IF action creates _conflict of _interest then. IF conflict is _disclosed to all parties then. Return proceed with caution to approval. Else. Return prohibited. End if. IF action requires _skills you lack then. Return decline assignment or seek supervision. Return proceed. End function. On the CISA exam, you will encounter scenarios where the right answer seems harsh. For example, if you discover illegal activity, your duty is generally to consult with legal counsel and the audit committee, not to confront the perpetrator directly. The code guides you to protect the profession and the organization, not to play the hero. Section 1.4, Navigating the Audit Charter and Organizational Independence. The Audit Charter is the most critical document for an audit department. It is the constitution of the internal audit function. Without a charter, you have no authority to interview staff, access systems, or request documents. The charter must be approved by the highest level of governance, usually the audit committee or board of directors. It defines the scope of audit activities. The authority to access records. The responsibility to report findings. The independence of the audit function. Independence is the cornerstone of auditing. You cannot audit your own work. If you implemented the firewall rules last year, you cannot audit the network security this year. This is a conflict of interest because you lack objectivity. There is a distinct difference between organizational independence and professional independence. Organizational independence: the audit department should report to a level within the organization that allows the audit function to fulfill its responsibilities without interference. Ideally, the Chief Audit Executive, CAE, reports functionally to the Audit Committee, the Board, and administratively to the CEO. Reporting to the CIO or CFO is a red flag, as they are often the owners of the systems you are auditing. Professional independence: this refers to the auditor's mindset. You must remain objective and unbiased, regardless of reporting lines. Consider this scenario: you are asked to audit a project managed by your spouse. Even if you are 100% sure you can be objective, the appearance of a conflict of interest undermines the credibility of the audit. In this case, you must recuse yourself. The relationship between the auditor and the auditee is delicate. The charter provides the authority, but your interpersonal skills provide the access. When you invoke the charter, "I have the right to see this," you have already lost the battle for cooperation. Use the charter as a shield, not a sword. Figure mind map: the auditor's mindset. Chapter overview: the auditor's mindset. 1.1 The modern role: assurance provider, bridge, tech to business, the expectation gap. 1.2 Risk and controls, inherent risk, control objectives, residual risk, analogy, car brakes. 1.3 Ethics and standards, competence, integrity, confidentiality, ISACA code. 1.4 Independence, audit charter, the constitution, reporting lines, functional, audit committee, administrative, CEO, objectivity vs. appearance. Domain 1, the Information Systems Auditing Process. Section 2.1, Developing a Risk-Based Audit Strategy. Section 2.2, the Audit Lifecycle, Planning, Scoping, and Objectives. Section 2.3, Mastering Evidence, Sampling Methodologies and Data Analytics. Section 2.4, the Executing the Audit and Communicating Findings Effectively. Section 2.5, Control Self-Assessment, CSA, and Continuous Auditing Techniques. Now that we have established the auditor's mindset, that critical bridge between business strategy and technological reality, we must operationalize it. The mindset is your compass, but the information systems (IS) auditing process is the map and the vehicle combined. In Domain 1, we move from abstract philosophy to concrete methodology. This is where many candidates struggle, not because the concepts are difficult, but because they are often taught in a vacuum. We will fix that. We are going to treat the audit process not as a checklist of administrative burdens, but as a structured life cycle designed to uncover truth and provide assurance. This chapter details how to prioritize what matters, gather irrefutable evidence, and communicate findings in a way that drives organizational change. 2.1 Developing a risk-based audit strategy. Resources are finite. Time, budget, and human capital are strictly limited in every organization. Therefore, an auditor cannot test everything. If you attempt to verify every single transaction or inspect every configuration setting, you will fail to deliver timely value. This reality necessitates a risk-based audit strategy. This approach dictates that audit resources should be deployed to the areas of highest risk to the organization. The audit universe and risk assessment. To audit effectively, you first need to know what exists. The audit universe is an inventory of all auditable entities, applications, business units, infrastructure, and processes. Once you have this inventory, you must apply a risk assessment to prioritize them. You are looking for the intersection of high impact and high likelihood. Inherent risk, the risk level before controls are applied. E.g., a database holding credit card numbers has high inherent risk. Control risk, the risk that the internal controls will fail to prevent or detect an error. Detection risk, the risk that you, the auditor, will fail to find a material issue. Your strategy is to focus on areas where inherent and control risks are high, while designing your procedures to minimize detection risk. Figure, extra detailed AI-ready prompt for AI-generated diagram showing a 3D risk heat map. The x-axis represents likelihood and the y-axis represents the impact. The z-axis, height of the bars, represents velocity of risk. High-risk areas are glowing red, medium in amber, low in cool blue. In the foreground, a stylized magnifying glass focuses on the red zone, symbolizing the audit focus. Professional, clean vector style, white background. The Audit Charter. Before you execute a single test, you need authority. The Audit Charter is the foundational document that grants this authority. It is not a project plan, it is a permanent document approved by the Board of Directors or the Audit Committee. The Charter defines 1. Authority, your right to access records and personnel. 2. Scope, the boundaries of the audit function. 3. Responsibility, what the audit function is accountable for. Without a charter, you are just an employee asking annoying questions. With a charter, you are an authorized agent of the board. 2.2 The audit life cycle, the planning, scoping, and objectives. A successful audit is determined before the fieldwork ever begins. The planning phase is where you define the rules of engagement. Planning and scoping. Scope creep is the enemy of the auditor. If you are auditing logical access controls for the ERP system, you must explicitly state what that includes. Does it include the underlying operating system? The database? The network firewall? If you leave the scope vague, you risk missing critical areas or wasting time on irrelevant ones. In scope, specific systems, locations, and time periods, e.g., transactions from January 1st to December 31st. Out of scope, explicitly stated exclusions to manage expectations. Defining objectives. Every audit procedure must map back to an objective. Generally, objectives fall into two categories. Compliance testing, asking, are the controls working? Example, does the system force a password change every 90 days? Substantive testing, asking, is the data accurate? Example, does the inventory balance in the database match the physical count in the warehouse? You typically perform compliance testing first. If controls are strong, you can reduce, but not eliminate, substantive testing. If controls are weak, you must increase substantive testing to verify the integrity of the data. 2.3 Mastering evidence, sampling methodologies and data analytics. Evidence is the currency of the auditor. Without it, your findings are just opinions. The CISA standard for evidence is that it must be sufficient, quantity, and appropriate, quality relevance. Sampling methodologies. Since you cannot test everything, you sample. The method you choose depends on your objective. Sampling method best used for description. Authors note, in practice, statistical sampling is preferred because it is defensible. If a manager challenges your finding, being able to say, I used a 95% confidence interval, is much stronger than saying, I picked 10 random files. Data analytics and CAATs. The modern auditor relies heavily on computer-assisted audit techniques, CAATs. Why sample 50 transactions when a script can verify 100% of 50 million transactions in seconds? Data analytics allows you to look for anomalies, gaps in sequences, e.g., missing check numbers, or duplicates. Hash conceptual example of a CAAT using Python logic. Hash goal, find transactions processed on weekends, potential fraud risk. Def check _weekend _transactions, transaction _log. Flagged _items equals. For record in transaction _log. If record.day _of _week in, Saturday, Sunday. Hash check if the user is authorized for weekend work. If not record.user.has _weekend privilege. Flagged _items.append, record. Return flagged _items. Using tools like these shifts the auditor's role from data gatherer to data interpreter. Figure, extra detailed AI-ready prompt for AI-generated diagram showing the data analytics funnel. Top layer shows raw, chaotic binary data and logs entering a funnel. The middle section shows filters labeled normalization, validation, and analysis logic. The bottom output shows clear, structured insights, anomalies, trends, and exceptions. The style should be isometric, tech-focused, utilizing a palette of silver, teal, and charcoal. 2 point for executing the audit and communicating findings effectively. You have planned, scoped, and analyzed. Now you are in the field. Execution involves interviews, observations, and reperformance. The hierarchy of evidence. Not all evidence is created equal. From strongest to weakest, 1. Personal observation, you saw it yourself. 2. External evidence, confirmation from a third party, e.g., bank statement sent directly to auditor. 3. Internal evidence, documents generated by the client, e.g., system logs, invoices. 4. Oral evidence, what someone told you in an interview. Always corroborate oral evidence with documentation. Trust, but verify is the golden rule. Communicating findings. The audit report is the tangible product of your work. If the report is confusing, the audit has failed. A finding must contain 5 specific elements to be actionable. Criteria, what should be the standard policy? Condition, what is the current reality? Cause, why the gap exists, root cause analysis. Effect, the impact, financial loss, compliance risk, reputational damage. Recommendation, how to fix it. Professional tip, never blindside a stakeholder. Discuss your findings with the process owner before the final report is issued. This ensures factual accuracy and maintains the relationship. The exit meeting is where you gain buy-in, not where you start arguments. 2.5 Control self-assessment, CSA, and continuous auditing techniques. The traditional audit model is periodic, e.g., once a year. However, risks change daily. This has led to the evolution of more dynamic auditing methods. Control self-assessment, CSA. CSA shifts the responsibility of control monitoring to the operational staff, with the auditor acting as a facilitator. Through workshops and surveys, teams assess their own risks and controls. This method builds a culture of compliance. When employees identify the risks themselves, they are more invested in the solutions. Continuous auditing versus continuous monitoring. These terms are often confused, but the distinction is vital for the exam. Continuous monitoring, performed by management. It is an operational process to ensure systems are running correctly. Continuous auditing, performed by audit. It involves automated tests that run against the monitoring data to flag risks in real time. By implementing continuous auditing, you move from hindsight, looking at last year's data, to insight, seeing problems as they happen. The IS audit process is a cycle of improvement. It requires discipline to follow the standards, creativity to find the hidden risks, and empathy to communicate them effectively. Master this process, and you become a trusted advisor rather than just a compliance checker. Figure Mind Map, Domain 1, IS Auditing Process, Risk-Based Strategy, Audit Universe, Risk Assessment, Inherent Risk, Control Risk, Detection Risk, Audit Charter, Audit Lifecycle, Planning, Scoping, In-Scope, Out-of-Scope, Objectives, Compliance Testing, Substantive Testing, Evidence, Sampling, Attribute, Variable, Stop-or-Go, Data Analytics CAATs, Evidence Hierarchy, Execution and Reporting, Fieldwork, Finding Structure, Criteria, Condition, Cause, Effect. Recommendation, Modern Techniques, CSA, Facilitated Workshops, Continuous Auditing vs Monitoring. Domain 2, Governance and Management of IT. Section 3.1, Evaluating IT Governance Frameworks and Strategic Alignment. Section 3.2, Organizational Structure and Segregation of Duties, Section 3.3, Resource Management, Optimization and Investment Practices, Section 3.4, Risk Management Maturity and Process Improvement Models, Section 3.5, Assessing Third-Party Services and Vendor Management. We have established the auditor's mindset and walked through the auditing life cycle. Now, we arrive at the foundation upon which all IT operations rest: governance. If Domain 1 was the map for how we audit, Domain 2 represents the structural integrity of the building we are inspecting. As an auditor, you cannot effectively judge the security of a system or the efficiency of a process if the organization lacks a clear direction or a defined structure. Governance is not merely bureaucracy, it is the system by which current and future use of IT is directed and controlled. In this chapter, we move away from the tactical trenches of evidence gathering and step into the boardroom. We will explore how leadership aligns IT with business goals, how duties are segregated to prevent fraud, and how risks are managed before they manifest. This domain is critical because a failure here cascades downward, compromising every firewall, server, and database in the environment. 3.1 Evaluating IT Governance Frameworks and Strategic Alignment. IT governance is often misunderstood as simply following the rules. In reality, it is about ensuring that IT delivers value to the business while mitigating the risks associated with technology. As auditors, our primary job here is to verify alignment. Strategic alignment means that the IT strategy is not a siloed roadmap but a direct derivative of the business strategy. If a company aims to be the fastest provider in the market, the IT governance structure must prioritize speed and agility over rigid, slow-moving legacy systems. If the goal is maximum security for financial assets, the governance framework must prioritize control over convenience. We evaluate this by looking for established frameworks. The most prevalent in the CISA curriculum is COBIT, Control Objectives for Information and Related Technologies. While you do not need to memorize every control objective, you must understand that COBIT bridges the gap between control requirements, technical issues, and business risks. It provides a common language for IT and management. Figure: extra detailed AI-ready prompt for AI-generated diagram showing the COBIT core model, displaying the separation between governance, board of directors, and management, C-suite IT. The visual should use a sleek, corporate blue and gray color scheme. It must depict arrows flowing down representing direction and arrows flowing up representing reporting and monitoring. Include distinct icons for align, plan, build, deliver, and monitor. When assessing strategic alignment, look for the existence of an IT strategy committee. This is a board-level committee, distinct from the IT steering committee. The IT strategy committee provides insight and advice to the board on IT strategy and alignment. They are forward-looking. Conversely, the IT steering committee is operational. They prioritize projects, approve budgets, and ensure the IT department is delivering on the strategy set forth by the board. If you find an organization where the CIO makes all strategic decisions without board oversight, that is a governance failure. It creates a risk that IT investments will not support business objectives, leading to value destruction rather than value creation. 3.2 Organizational Structure and Segregation of Duties. The structure of an IT organization dictates how information flows and who holds authority. However, for the CISA candidate and the practicing auditor, the most critical concept in this section is the segregation of duties, SOD. SOD is a preventive control designed to ensure that no single individual has the authority to execute a transaction, record the transaction, and control the asset involved. In IT terms, this translates to preventing one person from modifying code and moving it to production without oversight. The classic conflict you must identify is the overlap between development and operations. If a developer has write access to the production environment, they have the ability to introduce unauthorized code, whether malicious or accidental, without detection. This is a critical finding in any audit. Below is a reference table for common SOD conflicts that you must recognize immediately. Role A, Role B. Why it is a conflict. In smaller organizations, perfect segregation is often impossible due to limited staff. This is where you, as the auditor, must look for compensating controls. Compensating controls might include detailed audit trails, supervisory reviews of logs, or mandatory vacations. Mandatory vacations are a detective control. They force a user to hand over their duties to someone else, increasing the likelihood that fraud or errors will be discovered in their absence. Figure: extra detailed AI-ready prompt for AI-generated diagram showing a wall of separation between a software developer and a production server. The developer is on the left with a laptop, the server is on the right. In the middle, a release manager or automated pipeline acts as the gatekeeper, holding a key. The lighting should be dramatic, highlighting the gatekeeper role to symbolize segregation of duties. Never accept "we are too small" as a valid excuse for a lack of control. Instead, verify that the organization has implemented supervision or monitoring that mitigates the risk of the combined duties. 3.3 Resource Management, Optimization and Investment Practices. IT is an expensive resource. Hardware, software, cloud services, and skilled personnel represent a significant portion of capital and operational expenditure. Governance ensures these resources are optimized. As auditors, we review how the organization values IT. This involves analyzing investment methodologies. We are not calculating ROI, return on investment, ourselves, but we are checking if the organization performed the calculation before spending millions on a new ERP system. You should be familiar with the standard financial metrics used in project approval. Payback period: how long until the project pays for itself? Net present value, NPV, the value of the project in today's dollars, accounting for inflation and interest. A positive NPV generally signals a sound investment. Internal rate of return, IRR, the interest rate that makes the NPV zero. Higher is generally better. Beyond finance, resource management involves human resource management. IT is knowledge work. If key personnel leave, does the knowledge leave with them? You must verify that the organization has cross-training programs and up-to-date documentation. If you walk into a server room and only one person knows the root password or how the backup script works, you have identified a key person risk. This is a governance failure because the continuity of the business is contingent on a single individual's health and employment. You must also assess sourcing strategies. Is the organization insourcing, outsourcing, or using a hybrid model? When an organization chooses to outsource, they often mistakenly believe they have transferred the risk. This is false. You can outsource the functionality, but you cannot outsource the accountability. The board of directors remains liable for the integrity of the data, regardless of where it resides. 3. For risk management maturity and process improvement models. An organization cannot manage what it cannot measure. Process maturity is a way of grading how reliable and predictable an organization's internal processes are. The most common benchmark for this is the CMMI, Capability Maturity Model Integration. It classifies organizational maturity into 5 levels. As an auditor, assessing the maturity level tells you how much reliance you can place on their systems. The 5 levels of CMMI. Initial: processes are unpredictable, poorly controlled, and reactive. The hero to culture: things get done only because of individual effort. Managed: processes are characterized for projects and are often reactive. Defined: processes are characterized for the organization and are proactive. Standardization exists. Quantitatively managed: processes are measured and controlled. Metrics drive decisions. Optimizing: focus on continuous improvement. When auditing a Level 1 organization, you will likely find high error rates, missed deadlines, and a lack of documentation. Your substantive testing, detailed checking of data, will need to be extensive. In a Level 4 or 5 organization, you can rely more on control testing. Because the processes are standardized and monitored, the likelihood of random error decreases, though the risk of systemic error remains. Figure: extra detailed AI-ready prompt for AI-generated diagram illustrating the 5 steps of the CMMI maturity model as a staircase. Level 1, chaos, is at the bottom with tangled wires. Level 5, optimizing, is at the top with a futuristic, clean, glowing streamlined process loop. Each step should be clearly labeled. The visual style should be isometric 3D. A quality management system, QMS, often runs parallel to these maturity models. The standard here is ISO 9001. While ISO 9001 focuses on general quality, it requires continuous process improvement. The auditor's role is to verify that continuous improvement is not just a slogan, but a documented cycle of Plan Do Check Act, PDCA. 3.5 Assessing third-party services and vendor management. The modern enterprise has no perimeter. Data flows seamlessly between on-premise servers and third-party cloud providers, SaaS, PaaS, IaaS. This shift makes vendor management one of the most critical aspects of IT governance. When an organization utilizes a third-party service provider, the contract is the primary control. You must review the Service Level Agreement, SLA. The SLA defines the expected level of service, such as 99.9% uptime or 24-hour response times. However, an SLA is useless without a penalty clause. If a vendor fails to meet the target, what is the consequence? If there is no penalty, the SLA is merely a wish list. Furthermore, how do we audit a vendor we cannot physically visit? AWS and Microsoft Azure do not allow every auditor to walk through their data centers. This is where third-party audit reports come into play. The industry standard is the SOC, System and Organization Controls, report. SOC 1 focuses on financial reporting controls. SOC 2 focuses on the trust services criteria, security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. This is usually what IT auditors care about most. Type 1 versus Type 2. A Type 1 report is a snapshot in time, design of controls. A Type 2 report covers a period of time, operating effectiveness. Always ask for a SOC 2 Type 2 report. A Type 1 report only proves the door has a lock, a Type 2 report proves the lock was actually used every day for the past 6 months. Once you receive the SOC report, your job is not done. You must read the User Control Considerations, UCCs, or Complementary User Entity Controls, CUECs, section. This section lists the controls the vendor expects the client to handle. For example, a cloud provider might secure the physical server, their responsibility, but they expect the client to enforce strong password policies, your responsibility. If the client ignores these UCCs, the vendor security is irrelevant. The right to audit. Finally, always check the contract for a right to audit clause. While you may rely on SOC reports for giant providers, for smaller, niche vendors, e.g., a local payroll processor, the organization should retain the right to conduct their own assessment. If a critical vendor refuses to provide independent assurance or allow an audit, this is a significant risk that must be raised to the governance committee. Governance is the assurance that the ship is being steered correctly. Management is the act of steering it. As the auditor, you verify that the captain has a map, the crew knows their stations, and the ship isn't taking on water from a third-party leak. Figure Mind Map IT Governance, Domain 2, Strategic Alignment, Business vs IT Strategy, Strategy Committee vs Steering Committee, Value Delivery, Frameworks, COBIT, Goals E-Metrics AISO Standards, Risk Management, Org Structure and SOD, Dev vs Ops Conflict, Authorization vs Recording, Compensating Controls, Key Person Risk, Resource Management, Financial Metrics, ROI NPV, Sourcing, Outsourcing Risks, Human Resources, Performance Measurement, Balanced Scorecard, KPIs versus KGIs. Maturity Models, CMMI, Vendor Management, SLA and Penalties, SOC Reports, Type 1 vs Type 2, Right to Audit. Domain 3, Information Systems Acquisition, Development, and Implementation. Sections Section 4.1, Business Case Analysis and Project Management Fundamentals. Section 4.2, Scrutinizing the System Development Life Cycle, SDLC. Section 4.3, Agile, DevOps, and Rapid Application Development Audits. Section 4.4, Application Controls, Input, Processing, and Output Integrity. Section 4.5, Post-implementation reviews and change management protocols. In Domain 2, we examined the blueprint, the governance structures that dictate how IT should align with business strategy. Now, in Domain 3, we pick up the hammer and nails. This is where strategy transforms into reality through the acquisition of software, the development of systems, and their implementation into the production environment. For the auditor, this domain represents a shift from evaluating leadership decisions to inspecting engineering discipline. This is where significant financial resources are consumed and where operational risk is often baked into the code. If governance is the steering wheel, Domain 3 is the engine room. Your role here is critical because defects introduced during development are exponentially more expensive to fix after deployment. We are moving beyond policy review to scrutinize the life cycle of value creation. You must ensure that projects are not just completed on time, but that they deliver the intended business value without compromising security. For Point 1, business case analysis and project management fundamentals. Every piece of software starts with an idea, but not every idea warrants an investment. As an auditor, your first checkpoint is the business case. This document is the project's justification, detailing the expected benefits, costs, and risks. Many organizations suffer from solutioneering, picking a technology and then searching for a problem to solve. You must verify that the business needs were clearly defined before a solution was selected. If the business case is weak or non-existent, the project is already at risk of failing to deliver value, regardless of how well the code is written. Project management is the discipline used to execute that business case. Whether the organization uses Prince2 or PMBOK, the fundamentals remain constant. You are looking for clear critical paths, resource allocation, and, crucially, a risk management plan that is active, not static. Figure A, detailed, minimalist infographic style diagram showing the triangle of constraints in project management. The three corners are labeled scope, cost, and time, with quality in the center. The background is a clean, technical white. Red warning indicators highlight scope creep for extending one corner, distorting the central quality shape. Auditing the project portfolio. When auditing a project portfolio, do not get distracted by the technical jargon of the deliverables. Focus on the feasibility study. Has the organization analyzed the economic, technical, and operational feasibility of the initiative? Review the project steering committee minutes. This body is responsible for removing obstacles and making go, no-go decisions. A steering committee that meets rarely or merely rubber stamps progress reports is a red flag. It indicates a lack of executive oversight. You must also assess benefit realization. It is common for projects to claim they will save millions to get funding, only to never track those savings post-implementation. An effective audit checks if the projected benefits defined in the business case were actually measured and achieved. For Point 2, scrutinizing the System Development Lifecycle, SDLC. The System Development Lifecycle, SDLC, is the roadmap for software creation. While methodologies vary, the traditional waterfall model provides the clearest structure for understanding the logical progression of development. It separates the process into distinct phases: detailed requirements, design, coding, testing, and deployment. Your primary focus here is phase gates. These are hard stops between phases where management must approve the work before proceeding. For example, coding should not begin until the design specifications are signed off. If these gates are porous, errors from the requirements phase will cascade down, becoming disastrous bugs in production. A critical concept for the CISA candidate is the definition of requirements. Vague requirements like "the system must be fast" are untestable. Good requirements are specific, measurable, and traceable. You should be able to trace a line from a line of code back to a design spec and back to a business requirement. Figure a clean, corporate-style visualization of the V model of software development. The left side of the V shows requirements, system design, and unit design descending. The right side shows user acceptance testing, system testing, and unit testing ascending. Dotted lines connect the corresponding levels horizontally, e.g., requirements connects to UAT, to visualize the verification and validation relationship. Verification versus validation. Auditors often confuse these two terms, but the distinction is vital. Verification asks, are we building the product right? It checks if the software meets the specified requirements. Validation asks, are we building the right product? It checks if the software actually solves the business problem. During the testing phase, pay close attention to user acceptance testing, UAT. This is the final validation step. It must be performed by the actual business users, not by the developers or the IT department. If developers perform UAT, they are merely confirming their own bias. You need evidence of sign-offs from business stakeholders stating clearly that the system functions as intended in real-world scenarios. For point 3, Agile, DevOps, and rapid application development audits. The rigid structure of waterfall is often too slow for modern business. Enter Agile and DevOps. These methodologies prioritize iteration and speed. However, speed often looks like chaos to an untrained auditor. You must learn to audit the process rather than just the documentation. In Agile, documentation is often lighter. Instead of a massive requirements document, you have user stories and a backlog. Do not penalize a team for lacking a 500-page spec sheet. Instead, audit their backlog grooming process, their sprint retrospectives, and how they define done. DevOps merges development and operations, using continuous integration and continuous deployment, CI/CD, pipelines. Here, the controls are automated. The security checks happen via code scanning tools within the pipeline itself. Auditing the CI/CD pipeline. In a DevOps environment, the pipeline is the control framework. You need to ensure that code cannot bypass the automated testing tools. Separation of duties still exists, but it looks different. A developer writes code, but the pipeline deploys it, not the human. Below is a conceptual example of a pipeline configuration. As an auditor, you verify that the security scan step is mandatory and blocks the build if it fails. Stages. Build. Test. Security scan hash the auditor's checkpoint. Deploy. Security scan. Script. Run SaaS tool, SRC. If vulnerabilities _found, then exit 1, FI. Rules. If $CA_commit_branch == of main. Rapid application development, RAD, uses prototyping to speed up development. The risk here is scope creep and poor documentation. Ensure that the approved prototype doesn't just become the production system without proper security hardening and optimization. For point 4, application controls, input, processing, and output integrity. While the SDLC covers how the system is built, application controls cover how the system functions. These are the specific automated checks that ensure the data remains accurate, complete, and valid. Input controls are your first line of defense. The phrase garbage in, garbage out, GIGO, is the law here. If the system accepts invalid data, the integrity of the entire database is compromised. You must look for validity checks, limit checks, and completeness checks. For example, a banking system should not accept a transaction date in the future, limit check, or a text string in a currency field, type check. These controls prevent users from accidentally or maliciously corrupting data. Processing and output controls. Processing controls ensure that the system performs calculations correctly. Common examples include run-to-run totals, checking that the number of records at the start of a batch equals the number at the end, and sequence checks. Output controls ensure the results are accurate and distributed only to authorized personnel. This involves logging who accessed a report and verifying that sensitive data, like PII, is masked or encrypted in the final output. Control type purpose audit test example. For point 5, post-implementation reviews and change management protocols. The system is live. The project team has disbanded. But the audit is not over. The post-implementation review, PIR is a critical learning opportunity. It asks, did we get what we paid for, and what went wrong? A PIR should be conducted several months after deployment. This allows enough time for the new car smell to fade and for operational issues to surface. You review the return on investment, ROI, and assess if the project controls were effective. Finally, we address change management. Once a system is in production, it must remain stable. Uncontrolled changes are the leading cause of system outages and security breaches. The break glass procedure. Standard changes go through a Change Advisory Board, CAB. But what about emergencies? When a server crashes at 2 a.m., you cannot wait for a committee meeting. Emergency changes require a break glass procedure. This allows a fix to be deployed immediately but requires retroactive documentation and approval within a set timeframe, e.g., 24 hours. As an auditor, you must scrutinize these emergency changes heavily to ensure they are not being used to bypass standard controls for non-urgent matters. You must strictly enforce separation of duties in change management. The developer who wrote the patch should not be the person who has the access rights to move that patch into the production environment. This prevents unauthorized code manipulation. Figure mind map, Domain 3, Information Systems Acquisition, Development, and Implementation, Project Management, Business Case, Justification, ROI, Feasibility, Technical, Economic, Portfolio Management, SDLC Methodology, Waterfall, Phase Gates, Requirements, V-Model, Verification versus Validation, Testing, Unit, Integration, UAT, Modern Development, Agile, Sprints, User Stories, DevOps, CI/CD Pipelines, Automated Controls, RAD, Prototyping, Speed, Application Controls, Input, Validation, JIGO, Processing, Calculations, Batches, Output, Reporting Privacy, Post-Go-Live, PIR, Lessons Learned, Benefit Realization, Change Management, CAB, Emergency Fixes, SOD. Domain 4, Information Systems Operations and Business Resilience. Sections E. Section 5.1, Managing IT Service Levels and Incident Response. Section 5.2, Auditing Database Management Systems and Data Governance. Section 5.3, Network Infrastructure, Hardware, Virtualization, and Cloud Architectures. Section 5.4, Disaster Recovery Planning, DRP, and Testing Strategies. Section 5.5, Business Continuity Planning, BCP, and Impact Analysis, BIA. In Domain 3, we built the engine. We acquired the software, developed the code, and implemented the system. Now, in Domain 4, we turn the key. The engine is running, the vehicle is moving, and the passengers, our stakeholders, expect a smooth ride. Information systems operations is where the theoretical value of IT meets the harsh reality of daily execution. For the CISA candidate, this domain is often the most tangible. It represents the daily grind, managing service levels, patching vulnerabilities, maintaining databases, and keeping the lights on. However, operations are fragile. Systems fail, natural disasters strike, and cyber attacks occur. Therefore, this domain couples operations with resilience. We are not just looking at how things run when the sun is shining, we are auditing the organization's ability to survive the storm. As auditors, we verify that the organization can detect incidents, recover from disasters, and sustain business operations under pressure. Section 5.1, Managing IT Service Levels and Incident Response. The relationship between IT and the business is defined by expectations. If IT promises 99.99% availability but delivers 90%, trust erodes and business processes fail. This relationship is codified in Service Level Agreements, SLAs. An auditor must verify that SLAs are realistic, measurable, and monitored. A common failing is an SLA based on technical vanity metrics rather than business impact. For example, a server might be up, pingable, but the application running on it is frozen. If the SLA only measures server uptime, the report looks green while the business sees red. You must review exception reports and performance logs to ensure that SLA breaches are not just recorded, but analyzed. Incident management versus problem management. When services falter, the IT service management (ITSM) machine kicks into gear. It is vital to distinguish between incident management and problem management, as they have different goals. Incident management is the ambulance. Its goal is to restore service as quickly as possible, often using workarounds. Problem management is the doctor. Its goal is to identify the root cause to prevent recurrence. An organization that excels at incident management but fails at problem management is stuck in a loop of permanent firefighting. They fix the same printer issue every week but never investigate the faulty driver causing it. As an auditor, check the help desk ticketing system. Look for frequent flyers, incidents that repeat with the same categorization. If you see repeated tickets for the same issue without a corresponding problem record, the organization is wasting resources on symptoms rather than cures. Figure, a dual-track flow diagram illustrating the ITSM lifecycle. The top track shows incident management moving from user report classification, workaround, service restoration. The bottom track shows problem management branching from the incident, moving to root cause analysis, permanent fix, known error database update. The tracks should be visually distinct but connected, emphasizing short-term fix versus long-term resolution. Section 5.2, Auditing Database Management Systems and Data Governance. If the network is the nervous system, the data is the memory. Database management systems, DBMS, hold the organization's most valuable asset, information. Auditing a DBMS requires a shift from general controls to specific technical constraints. The fundamental principle here is data integrity. We often refer to the acid test for transactions. 1. Atomicity, all parts of a transaction succeed, or none do. 2. Consistency, data transforms from one valid state to another. 3. Isolation, concurrent transactions do not interfere with each other. 4. Durability, once saved, data remains saved, even during power loss. Concurrency and integrity controls. When multiple users access data simultaneously, risks arise. Without proper concurrency controls, you get the lost update problem, where two users update a record, but the second overwrite erases the first user's changes. Auditors must review the database locking strategies. However, the bigger risk usually lies in permissions. The database administrator, DBA, holds the keys to the kingdom. In many organizations, the DBA has unchecked power. A critical audit step is verifying segregation of duties, SOD. The person who manages the database performance should not be the same person who reviews the database security logs. Bad practice, granting excessive privileges. Grant all privileges on finance_DB. *TO a junior_bar. Audit check. 1. Who holds all privileges? 2. Are accounts shared? E.g., using SAP or rote generically. 3. Is the audit trail enabled for schema changes? Your audit should confirm that database activity logs are not just enabled, but are stored on a separate server. If a DBA can delete the logs that record their own malicious actions, the control is effectively non-existent. Section 5.3, Network Infrastructure, Hardware, Virtualization, and Cloud Architectures. The modern infrastructure is rarely just a rack of servers in a basement. It is a hybrid mix of legacy hardware, virtualized clusters, and multi-cloud environments. This complexity introduces opacity. Managing physical and virtual assets. You cannot secure what you do not know you have. Asset management is the prerequisite for all operations. In a virtualized environment, VM sprawled is a significant risk. Virtual machines are spun up for testing and forgotten, running unpatched in the background, consuming resources and offering an attack surface. Auditors must ask for an inventory and compare it against automated network scanning tools. The discrepancies between what we think we have and what the network scanner sees are your audit findings. The cloud and the shared responsibility model. When auditing cloud service providers, CSPs, the most common misconception is assuming the cloud provider handles everything. This is dangerous. The shared responsibility model dictates that while Amazon or Microsoft manages the security of the cloud, physical data centers, hypervisors, the customer is responsible for security in the cloud, data, access management, OS patching in IaaS. Responsibility on-premises IaaS, infrastructure as a service, PaaS, platform as a service, SaaS, software as a service. As a CISA, you often cannot physically inspect a cloud provider's data center. Instead, you review their third-party audit reports, like SOC 2 Type 2. Your job is to ensure your organization has reviewed these reports and addressed any user entity controls, the specific security steps the provider says you must take. Section 5.4 Disaster Recovery Planning, DRP, and Testing Strategies. Disaster recovery, DR, is about IT survival. It focuses on the technology, getting the servers back up, restoring the data, and reconnecting the pipes. The two metrics that define DRP are, 1. Recovery time objective, RTO, how long can we afford to be down? Time tolerance. 2. Recovery point objective, RPO, how much data can we afford to lose? Data loss tolerance. If a business leader says, we need 0 downtime and 0 data loss, but provides a budget for a nightly tape backup, there is a misalignment. Your audit must verify that the investment in recovery infrastructure matches the RTO or RPO targets. Recovery strategies. The strategy depends on the criticality defined above, * cold site, power and air conditioning are available, but no IT equipment. Cheap, but slow, weeks to recover. * warm site, equipment is there, but data needs to be restored. Moderate cost, moderate speed, days to recover. * hot site, a mirror image. Data is replicated in near real time. Expensive, fast, minutes, hours to recover. The necessity of testing. A DRP that sits in a binder is a hallucination. It does not exist until it is tested. The most critical audit finding in this domain is often lack of comprehensive testing. Testing varies in intensity. 1. Checklist review, reading the plan. 2. Tabletops walkthrough, role-playing the scenario in a conference room. 3. Simulation, testing specific teams without shutting down operations. 4. Parallel test, running the recovery site alongside production to compare. 5. Full interruption, cutover, shutting down primary to force a failover, high risk, high assurance. Figure, a comparative chart showing DR testing types on an X-Y axis. The X-axis represents cost effort and the Y-axis represents risk assurance. Checklist review is bottom left, low cost, low assurance. Full interruption is top right, high cost, high assurance, high risk. Simulation and parallel testing occupy the middle ground. The visual should highlight parallel testing as the sweet spot for many mature organizations. Auditors must review test results. A test that failed is actually a success for the auditor if the organization learned from it and updated the plan. A series of perfect tests often indicates the tests are too easy. Section 5.5 Business Continuity Planning, BCP, and Impact Analysis, BIA. While DRP fixes the computers, Business Continuity Planning, BCP, fixes the business. BCP asks, how do we pay employees if payroll is down, or how do we serve customers if the call center is destroyed? The foundation of the BCP is the Business Impact Analysis, BIA. You cannot protect everything equally, so the BIA identifies which processes are critical to survival. Auditing the BIA. The auditor's primary question regarding the BIA is, who provided the input? If IT filled out the BIA, it is likely wrong. The business process owners, HR, finance, sales, must define criticality. The BIA identifies, * critical business processes, what keeps the cash flowing? * interdependencies, does payroll depend on HR updates? * maximum tolerable downtime, MTD, the point of no return where the business collapses. If the MTD is 24 hours, but the DRP supports an RTO of 48 hours, the business will fail before the systems are recovered. This gap is a critical audit finding. The human element. Finally, remember that BCP is about people. The best technical recovery fails if the staff doesn't know what to do. Call trees, notification lists, must be updated. Employees need to know where to go and how to communicate. When auditing BCP, look for the bus factor. If the plan relies on one specific hero knowing exactly which scripts to run, the plan is fragile. Resilience is systemic, not heroic. Figure mind map of domain for the IS Operations and Business Resilience Center, IS Operations and Resilience, branch, IT Service Management, sub-branch, SLAs, Expectations VES. Reality, sub-branch, Incident Management, Restore Service, sub-branch, Problem Management, Root Cause, branch, Infrastructure and Data, sub-branch, DBMS, ACID, Concurrency, sub-branch, Cloud, Shared Responsibility, sub-branch, Asset Management, Inventory, Sprawl, branch, Disaster Recovery, DRP, sub-branch, Metrics, RTO versus RPO, sub-branch, Sites, Cold, Warm, Hot, sub-branch, Testing, Walkthrough to Cutover, branch, Business Continuity, BCP, sub-branch, BIA, Identify Criticality, sub-branch. People, Call trees, Safety, sub-branch, Alignment, IT RTOE Business MTD. Domain 5, Protection of Information Assets. Section 6.1, Logical Access Controls, IAM, Biometrics, and Authorization. Section 6.2, Network Security Auditing, Firewalls, IDs 5PS, and Encryption. Section 6.3, Physical and Environmental Security Controls. Section 6.4, Cyber Threat Landscape, Social Engineering and Penetration Testing. Section 6.5, Security Event Monitoring and Forensic Investigation Procedures. In Domain 4, we turned the key and started the engine, ensuring operations ran smoothly and resiliently. Now, we face a stark reality: there are forces actively trying to shut that engine down, steal the cargo, or hijack the vehicle. Welcome to Domain 5, the fortress of the CISA curriculum. This is where we discuss the protection of information assets. While many consider this the security of domain, as an auditor, you must view it as the assurance of trust domain. Security controls are not just technical barriers, they are business enablers that allow the organization to operate in a hostile environment. In this chapter, we move beyond the theoretical governance of Domain 2 and the operational management of Domain 4. We are now auditing the shields, the locks, and the alarms. We will dissect how organizations define access, secure their networks against invisible threats, and protect physical hardware from tangible dangers. Your role here is critical. You are not the security architect building the wall, you are the inspector checking the mortar. You verify that the controls, logical, physical, and administrative, actually mitigate the risks they were designed to address. 6.1 Logical Access Controls, IAM, Biometrics, and Authorization. The fundamental question of information security is simple: who are you, and what are you allowed to do? Answering this requires a robust identity and access management, IAM, framework. Without it, the strongest encryption and the most expensive firewalls are rendered useless by a single compromised credential. Logical access controls are the primary gatekeepers of digital assets. As an auditor, you must distinguish between three distinct phases that often get conflated: identification, authentication, and authorization. Identification is the claim of identity, e.g., a username. Authentication is the proof of that identity, e.g., a password. Authorization is the permission granted after the proof is accepted. A common failure point I see in audits is the rubber stamping of authorization. We often find users retaining access rights from previous roles, a concept known as privilege creep. To combat this, you must verify the principle of least privilege. Users should have only the bare minimum access required to perform their jobs, and no more. Biometric controls. Biometrics represent something you are. While fingerprints and facial recognition offer convenience, they introduce unique auditing challenges regarding accuracy. You need to understand two key metrics, the false rejection rate, FRR, and the false acceptance rate, FAR. FRR, type 1 error, is annoying, it keeps authorized users out, hindering productivity. FAR, type 2 error, is dangerous, it lets unauthorized users in, causing a breach. In high-security environments, we tune systems to accept a higher FRR to ensure the FAR remains near zero. Conversely, a consumer phone might prioritize a low FRR for user convenience. When auditing biometrics, question the storage mechanism. Biometric data cannot be changed like a password. If a fingerprint database is compromised, that credential is burned forever. Ensure that biometric templates are hashed and stored securely, never as raw image data. Segregation of duties, SOD. Segregation of duties is the auditor's favorite control because it prevents fraud by design. No single individual should have the authority to execute a transaction from initiation to finalization. The person who approves the vendor payment cannot be the same person who sets up the vendor in the system. In smaller organizations where headcount is low, perfect SOD is often impossible. Here, you must look for compensating controls. If one person does everything, is there a detailed, immutable audit log reviewed daily by a manager? That is your assurance bridge when the ideal structure isn't feasible. 6.2 Network security auditing, firewalls, IDs, IPS, and encryption. If IAM is the gatekeeper, the network is the highway system. Your job is to ensure there are checkpoints, speed limits, and dividers preventing traffic from crashing into critical infrastructure. Network security relies heavily on defense in depth. We do not trust a single perimeter defense. Instead, we layer control so that if one fails, another stands ready to catch the threat. Firewalls and architecture. Firewalls are the traffic cops of the network. They filter traffic based on predefined rules. However, a firewall is only as good as its configuration. A default allow any rule at the bottom of an access control list, ACL, negates the entire device. Auditors must review the rule base. Look for cleanup rules, implicit deny, at the end of the list. Furthermore, distinguish between packet filtering firewalls, stateless, and stateful inspection firewalls. Stateful firewalls understand the context of a connection, making them significantly more secure against spoofing attacks. Consider the following simplified firewall rule audit checklist. Implicit deny, is the last rule deny all? Specificity, are rules using specific IP addresses rather than ANY? Justification, does every open port have a documented business owner? Review frequency, when was the rule set last purged of obsolete entries? Figure, a detailed architectural diagram for AI generation showing a secure network topology. The image should feature the internet cloud on the left, connecting to a perimeter router, then a firewall. Behind the firewall is a DMZ, demilitarized zone, containing a web server and mail server. A second internal firewall separates the DMZ from the internal network, LAN, which contains a database server and employee workstations. Use distinct icons for each device. Arrows indicate traffic flow. The style should be technical, clean, blueprint blue lines on a white background, high contrast, professional IT schematic style. IDs versus IPS. Intrusion detection systems, IDs, and intrusion prevention systems, IPS, are often confused. The difference lies in the action. An IDs is a burglar alarm, it detects an intrusion and sends an alert, but it does not stop the intruder. An IPS is a guard dog, it detects the threat and actively blocks the traffic. When auditing these, check the tuning. An IPS with too many false positives will eventually be turned off by frustrated administrators. Check the logs, act on the silence. If an IPS hasn't generated an alert in 6 months, it is likely misconfigured or effectively blind. Encryption and Public Key Infrastructure, PKI. Encryption provides confidentiality. In the context of network security, you will encounter two main types, symmetric, speed, and asymmetric, security. Think of symmetric encryption like a house key. You and your family have copies of the same key to lock and unlock the door. It is fast and efficient, but sharing the key securely is difficult. Asymmetric encryption, public-private key, resolves the sharing issue. I give you an open padlock, my public key. You put a message in a box, lock it with my padlock, and send it to me. Only I have the key, private key, to open it. In auditing PKI, the protection of the private key is paramount. If the root certificate authority's private key is stolen, the entire trust hierarchy collapses. 6.3 Physical and environmental security controls. It is easy to get lost in the digital ether and forget that data lives on physical hardware. If I can walk into your server room and steal the hard drive, your 256-bit encryption and complex firewall rules are irrelevant. Physical security is about layers, perimeter fences, guarded lobbies, man-traps, and finally, the locked server rack. Access to the data center should be tighter than access to the bank vault. Environmental controls. Environmental controls protect the hardware from natural physics. Heat, humidity, and fire are the silent enemies of availability. HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning servers generate immense heat. If cooling fails, CPUs throttle down and eventually shut off to prevent damage. You must audit the redundancy of cooling systems. Do they have a backup power source independent of the main grid? Fire suppression, this is a life safety issue. Traditional water sprinklers destroy electronics, wet pipe systems. Data centers prefer dry pipe, water holds back until smoke is confirmed, or gas-based suppression, FM200 or argonite, that starves the fire without damaging equipment. Auditors note, always prioritize human life. A secure door that prevents people from escaping during a fire is a failed control. Fail-safe locks must unlock when power is cut, fail-secure locks remain locked. Ensure the data center doors are fail-safe regarding exit, even if fail-secure regarding entry. 6. For cyber threat landscape, social engineering and penetration testing. The threat landscape is dynamic. Attackers do not follow a rulebook, and they rarely attack your strongest point. They look for the path of least resistance. Often, that path is a human being. Social engineering. Social engineering exploits human psychology rather than technical vulnerabilities. Phishing, pretexting, and tailgating are common methods. As an auditor, you cannot patch a human with software code. You patch them with training. Review the Security Awareness Training Program. Is it an annual click-through slide deck, or is it continuous? Look for evidence of simulated phishing campaigns. The metric that matters is not how many people clicked, but the trend line. Is the click rate decreasing over time? Are employees reporting suspicious emails? Penetration testing. Vulnerability scanning and penetration testing are distinct activities. A vulnerability scan is an automated inspection, like walking around a house checking for unlocked windows. A penetration test is an authorized, simulated attack, actually climbing through the window to see how far you can get. Auditors must review the scope and rules of engagement for pen tests. A test that is too restricted provides false assurance. Conversely, a test with zero restrictions could crash production systems. Look for the remediation plan. Finding a vulnerability is easy, fixing it is the hard part. If the same high-risk findings appear in the pen test report year after year, the organization has a management failure, not just a technical one. 6.5 Security Event Monitoring and Forensic Investigation Procedures. Despite our best efforts, breaches happen. When they do, the organization's ability to detect, respond, and investigate determines the magnitude of the damage. Security Information and Event Management, (SIEM). A SIEM system aggregates logs from firewalls, servers, and databases to identify patterns. A single failed login is noise. A failed login followed by a privilege escalation on a database server is an incident. The auditor's focus here is on log integrity. Can an administrator delete the logs that record their own actions? If so, the audit trail is compromised. Logs should be written to a worm, write once, read many, drive or immediately offloaded to a separate, secured server. Forensic procedures and chain of custody. If an incident leads to legal action, the handling of evidence is scrutinized more than the evidence itself. This is where a chain of custody becomes the gold standard. Chain of custody is a documented history that records who held the evidence, when, and for what purpose, from the moment of collection until presentation in court. Identification: isolate the compromised media. Preservation: do not turn the computer off if possible, you lose RAM data, but disconnect it from the network. Collection: create a bit-for-bit image of the drive using a write blocker. Never analyze the original evidence, analyze the copy. Analysis: perform the investigation on the forensic copy. Reporting: document findings objectively. If the chain of custody is broken, if there is a 10-minute gap where the hard drive was unaccounted for, a defense attorney will have the evidence thrown out. As an auditor, review the incident response policy to ensure these legal protocols are baked into the technical procedure. Protection of information assets is a relentless cycle of define, protect, monitor, and improve. By mastering Domain 5, you prove that you understand not just how technology works, but how to keep it safe in a world that wants to break it. Figure Mind Map, Chapter 6, Protection of Information Assets. Mind Map Root, Domain 5, Protection of Information Assets, Branch 6.1 Logical Access, Node IAM Lifecycle, Leaf Identification, Claim, Leaf Authentication, Proof, Leaf Authorization, Permission, Node Biometrics, Leaf FRR, Type 1, Convenience, Leaf FAR, Type 2, Security, Node Principles, Leaf Least Privilege, Leaf Segregation of Duties, SOD, Branch 6.2 Network Security, Node Firewalls, Leaf Packet Filtering versus Stateful, Leaf Architecture, DMZ, Node Detection, Leaf IDs, Passive, Leaf IPS, Active, Node Encryption, Leaf Symmetric, Speed, Leaf Asymmetric, PKI Keys, Branch 6.3 Physical Security, Node Access, Leaf Mantraps, Leaf Perimeter Defense, Node Environment, Leaf AFAC, Cooling, Leaf Fire, Dry Pipe Gas, Leaf Safety First, Failsafe, Branch 6. For threats, Node Social Engineering, Leaf Phishing, Leaf Training and Awareness, Node Testing, Leaf Vulnscan Automated, Leaf Pen Test, Simulated Attack, Branch 6.5 Monitoring and Forensics, Node CM, Leaf Log Aggregation, Leaf Log Integrity, Worm, Node Forensics, Leaf Chain of Custody, Leaf Write Blockers, Leaf Bit-for-bit Imaging. The final mile: exam preparation and career growth. Section 7.1, Deconstructing the CISA Exam Question Logic. Section 7.2, Strategic Test-Taking Techniques for Scenario-Based Questions. Section 7.3, The Professional Development Path and Maintaining Certification. Section 7.4, Future Trends in Auditing, AI, Blockchain, and Automation. We have journeyed through the life cycle of information systems auditing. We established the mindset in Domain 1, built the governance structures in Domain 2, and engineered the systems in Domain 3. We operated the engine in Domain 4 and built a fortress around it in Domain 5. Now, we face the final hurdle. You possess the knowledge, but the CISA exam does not merely test what you know, it tests how you think. The exam is a simulation of judgment under pressure, requiring you to apply the ISACA framework to ambiguous scenarios. This chapter bridges the gap between academic understanding and exam performance. We will deconstruct the specific logic required to select the best answer when multiple options seem correct. We will also look beyond the exam day to the maintenance of your certification and the evolving future of our profession. Your technical skills brought you here, but your ability to synthesize information and make risk-based decisions will carry you across the finish line. Let us prepare for the final mile. Section 7.1, Deconstructing the CISA Exam Question Logic. The CISA exam is notorious for offering for plausible answers and asking for the best one. This causes frustration for candidates who approach the test purely from a technical perspective. To succeed, you must adopt the persona of a risk advisor, not a system administrator. A technical fix is rarely the correct answer if a governance issue exists. For example, if a server is unpatched, the technician patches it. The auditor, however, asks why the patch management process failed in the first place. You must internalize the ISACA hierarchy of needs. In any given scenario, human life and safety always take precedence. Following that, legal and regulatory compliance is paramount, followed by business alignment, and finally, technical efficiency. When analyzing a question, identify the stakeholder involved. An answer suitable for a firewall administrator is likely incorrect if the question places you in the shoes of the audit committee. Context dictates the correct course of action. The do not touch principle. A common trap in the exam is the temptation to fix the problem. As we discussed in Domain 1, independence is the auditor's shield. If a question asks what you should do upon finding a vulnerability, fix the vulnerability is almost always the wrong answer. Your role is to observe, test, validate, and report. You report the finding to management, who then directs the remediation. Crossing this line compromises your objectivity for future audits. Internalize this mantra: we identify the risk, we do not implement the control. If an answer option involves you configuring a router or rewriting code, eliminate it immediately unless the question specifically designates you as an implementer, which is rare in CISA context. First versus best versus most. The modifiers in the question stem change the logic entirely. If a question asks what you should do first, it implies a sequence. The best long-term solution might be an option, but if it cannot be done without a preliminary step, it is incorrect. For instance, upon discovering a breach, the best outcome is preventing future attacks. However, the first step is to contain the current incident or notify the appropriate response team. If the question asks for the most effective control, you are looking for preventative measures. Detective and corrective controls are necessary, but a control that prevents the risk from materializing is mathematically superior in a risk calculation. Section 7.2, Strategic Test-Taking Techniques for Scenario-Based Questions. Understanding the material is half the battle, navigating the exam interface and managing your cognitive load is the other. The CISA exam consists of 150 questions over 4 hours. This requires mental endurance. Do not read the case study or scenario linearly from start to finish. Instead, read the actual question, the last sentence, first. This primes your brain to look for specific details, such as the role you are playing or the specific phase of the audit, before you wade through the context. By knowing the question first, you can filter out distracting information. ISACA writes questions with deliberate noise, details about specific hardware or software brands that often have no bearing on the governance or risk principle being tested. The process of elimination. Rarely will the correct answer jump off the screen. You must work backward. Usually, 2 answers are obviously wrong or irrelevant to the domain being tested. Eliminate them physically on the screen or mentally to declutter your options. This leaves you with 2 good answers. Compare them against the ISACA hierarchy discussed in Section 7.1. Does one answer address the root cause while the other addresses a symptom? Always choose the root cause. Does one answer rely on a specific technology while the other relies on a process or policy? Process usually beats technology because technology changes, but sound governance endures. Keyword implication for the auditor. Time management and flagging. You have approximately 1.6 minutes per question. If a scenario is convoluted and you feel stuck, pick your best guess, flag the question, and move on. Dwelling on a single question creates anxiety that impacts your performance on subsequent items. Trust your first instinct. Research into standardized testing suggests that changing an answer often leads to switching from a correct option to an incorrect one, unless you find new evidence in the question text you missed initially. Finish the exam with time to spare to review only your flagged questions. Do not review the questions you felt confident about, you risk overanalyzing them and talking yourself out of the right answer. Section 7.3, the Professional Development Path and Maintaining Certification. Passing the exam is a milestone, but certification is a commitment to continuous competence. The CISA designation requires earning continuing professional education, CPE, credits. This is not merely an administrative fee, it is a mechanism to ensure you remain relevant. The industry moves faster than any textbook can be printed. When you obtained your CISA, cloud computing might have been the dominant trend. In 5 years, quantum cryptography or autonomous auditing agents may dominate. CPEs force you to engage with these changes. View CPEs as networking opportunities rather than obligations. Attending local chapter meetings or global conferences connects you with peers facing similar challenges. These relationships often provide more immediate problem-solving value than technical manuals. Career trajectory, from checker to advisor. The CISA often serves as a gateway to senior leadership. Junior auditors focus on testing controls, checking if the box is ticked. Senior auditors focus on the design of controls, asking if the box is worth ticking. As you mature in your career, use the CISA framework to transition into advisory roles. A CISA-certified professional is uniquely qualified to bridge the gap between the CIO and the board of directors. You speak the language of bits and bytes, but you report in the language of dollars and risk. Potential career paths extend beyond pure auditing. Many CISAs become Chief Information Security Officers, CISOs, Risk Officers, or Compliance Directors. The discipline of verifying claims and analyzing evidence is universally valuable in executive management. Figure, extra detailed AI-ready prompt for AI-generated diagram illustrating a career growth roadmap. The path starts at System Auditor, holding a clipboard, moves up to Audit Manager, holding a tablet, then splits into 3 branches: CISO, Shield icon, Risk Officer, Scales icon, and Consultancy Partner, Handshake icon. The background should be a subtle corporate cityscape, clean lines, blue and gold color palette. Section 7.4, Future Trends in Auditing, AI, Blockchain, and Automation. The days of manual sampling, selecting 25 changes at random to verify approval, are numbered. The future of auditing is continuous, automated, and driven by artificial intelligence. We are moving toward auditing by exception. In this model, bots monitor 100% of transactions in real time. The auditor is alerted only when a transaction deviates from the established pattern or policy. This shifts the auditor's role from data gatherer to complex problem solver. You must prepare to audit artificial intelligence itself. As organizations integrate AI into decision-making, auditors must verify the integrity of the algorithms. Is the AI biased? Is the training data secure? The black box problem of explainable AI is the next great frontier for IS auditing. Blockchain and immutable ledgers. Blockchain technology presents a paradox for auditors. If the ledger is immutable and decentralized, the traditional need for a central authority to verify transactions diminishes. However, the need to verify the input remains critical. The phrase "garbage in, forever in" applies here. Auditors will spend less time verifying the transaction history and more time verifying the controls at the point of data entry, the oracle. Smart contracts also require auditing to ensure the code executes the business intent correctly. The human element remains. Despite these technological shifts, the need for professional skepticism cannot be automated. An algorithm can detect an anomaly, but it cannot interview a nervous system administrator to understand the intent behind a bypass. The CISA of the future is a hybrid professional, part data scientist, part behavioral psychologist, and part business strategist. The tools will change, but the mandate, to provide assurance in an uncertain world, remains constant. Your journey does not end with the certification. It begins. Wear the badge with pride, uphold the code of ethics, and never stop asking the difficult questions. Figure mind map, the final mile, CISA exam and career, CISA final prep, the icon, flag, exam logic, the icon, brain, hierarchy of needs, life safety, compliance, business sufficiency, auditor role, observe and report, do not fix, implement, keywords, first versus. Best, most effective, test tactics, icon, crosshairs, scenario strategy, read last sentence first, identify distractors, elimination, remove 2 wrong answers, compare remaining to mindset, time management, 1.6 minutes per question, flag and move on, career growth, icon, chart line, maintenance, CPE credits, continuous learning, trajectory, checker-advisor, auditor-CISO risk officer, future trends, icon, rocket, AI and automation, continuous auditing, auditing algorithms. Blockchain, smart contract audits, Oracle verification, human element, skepticism algorithms, intent analysis, /figure.